Recording is on.
All right, so today's October 4th. We're continuing our discussion on the ripeness is all for the Desiderata Extinctionati discussion. Do you remember where we left off, or did anyone have a question?
I have my
I do, but you go first, Sophie.
No, I have my notes, but I left them in the other room. So go ahead.
Oh, okay. So when I looked over the video, then I realized that Gary asked a question, and I didn't really answer it previously, and that was, how do we actually? How was the question phrased? It was. Something about how we approach enlightenment, and I said about the three guna, and I think I wasn't explicit about why I was talking about that. And the whole reason I realized the bit that I left out or didn't emphasize enough was that is to get into situations of sattva. So spending time in situations of sattva is how you get out of the forest. So I don't think that came across in what I said. So that kind of sattva is you get it in sacred places, in churches and stuff like that, and it's quite legit to go and be a kind of a psychic vampire and go to a church or temple or some sacred place and just soak up the the sattva. You may get some creepy priest or something come over and like try and recruit you or something, but yeah, when I was younger, I often used to do that. I used to, basically a complete atheist, but I would hang out even in St. Paul's Cathedral and some of these places, because you can soak up the sattva. And this is what I was told in the cult I was in when I was young, was that the various types of energy, we just call it energy, E equals mc squared, but the various qualities of energy, and that's what the guna really are, its qualities. And so this kind of force energy, which is what everybody is using kind of when they go to the gym, when they try and get through work and stuff. They're basically just using, kilojoules from starch that they give you with rice and bread, basically slave food. So slave energy is starch, and the energy you get from starch is kind of this gross thing that can kind of get you through the day. But there's a fine energy that people don't come across very often these days, and so unless you're rich, actually, if you hang out with rich people, they know what this is. So we think about rich people living high on the hog, and people that working class people that don't hang out with the billionaires and stuff. They think of the billionaires as the kind of nouveau riche billionaires who kind of like, flaunting it, and they in their super yachts and Donald Trumps with gold-plated things and stuff. And that's very tamasic and rajasic too. If you get genuinely rich people and old money, they dripping with sattva. So if you ever got to, for example, go to Buckingham Palace and met the Queen, it doesn't come across very well on video and stuff. But in those situations, you get this kind of golden aura of light, and you could stay up all night and be completely energized. You'd never get exhausted in that environment, and it's because it's very subtle sattvic energy. So this idea that the various types of energy and positive and negative energy just makes kind of hard-headed scientists want to barf. And it's kind of true, but this is all about psychological reactions to environments. And so it's, it's called energy, but it's that's that kind of peace. And it's kind of mentioned in esoteric Christianity as the peace that passes all understanding. You can get it a lot in nature, and one of the very sad things about tourism is that there are a lot of these places that were historically places that people came to soak up sattva, and there's none left because they're just crowded with millions of people, following a tour guide with a flag, and then they all doing the tour to see the Vatican or whatever, and the net result is they cattle farms with zero sattva in them. And people leave going, yeah, culture, but I don't know what it was all about. And they don't get that it was this aura of sacredness and fine energy, and it's kind of transcendent. So it's a trap, to make no mistake. There are loads and loads of people that are trapped in sattva, especially, people that observe the Dalai Lama and stuff, Buddhism, a lot of people in New Age religion and stuff, and they call them like bliss junkies, and they suckers for this fine energy, and it's a trap. It basically gives you this kind of ego of sanctity and stuff, and that's very insidious and hard to even spot in yourself. So you want to be down to earth, not have your head in a pink cloud of sattva. And so that's why that Sri Ramakrishna said that sattva was one of the robbers. It will rob you of liberation and enlightenment. You have to pull away from sattva eventually. But in getting there, it's very useful. One of the whole points of a cult, and one of the things the best times in my life were in the cult I was in when I was younger, was because of the sattva. There were moments where they're all strange things, which I won't tell you because it'll just seem weird. But with enough people on that kind of level, you get tons and tons of that subtle energy, and eventually it's no different to an acid trip. Really, the things that I don't know that I experienced that I don't know how to explain. They just defy physics and stuff, and you don't know whether it's your head that's on a complete trip, but everybody shares the experience, so it's a little bit funky. And it's very like LSD. It's basically, the synchronicity or shared experience. The intersubjectivity of, say, mescaline and LSD. And you don't know psychologically how to interpret it afterwards as a hard-headed Westerner. But I just want to say that because I think a lot of people don't even know about that. And it's a great shame. And it's becoming a rarer commodity. One of the things that I say about, like overpopulation. Overpopulation is not just, hey, can we feed everybody? I don't know why overpopulation gets interpreted all the time. We're not overpopulated, we can feed everybody. Like feeding everybody is the big deal. Is that quality of life goes down. If you have 7.8 billion people, it's very different to live in that world as an individual and as an individual psyche in terms of what your boundaries are. I mean, our brain has evolved for a limit, and that limit is the Dunbar limit of about 150 to 250 people in a world of about 1 million people. So everything's distorted now. The images we're getting, the news we're getting, we're not evolved to get this level of news on this, and with this intensity. You're getting 7.8 billion stories funneled in your direction. And that's too much for an individual psyche. So psychically, we're not evolved to live on a planet with anything like these numbers. So the other aspects to overpopulation that are more like quality of life, the chances of you getting realized are lower. You see, if you think linearly, oh fuck, I think I'm talking too much here, but I'm on a roll. If you think linearly, like guys like Jeff Bezos, and I've heard Bill Gates and a lot of these tech utopians say something similar, and that is, they say, well, the more people we have, the more geniuses we have. Basically, if you say that there's one genius in 1 million people, well, if we have 10 billion people, we've got that many more Leonardo da Vinci's, we've got that many more Michelangelos. It's wonderful. And you're not. Basically, those Leonardo da Vinci's and Michelangelos won't appear. Basically, Michelangelos and all those kind of geniuses, they like most shamans and things like that. They medicated. Those guys are in their millions today in basically mental health care facilities and just being medicated out of existence. like, I mean, it's easy to explain. If you're having trouble understanding this, imagine if Leonardo da Vinci did exist today. Well, he wouldn't work for fucking Amazon. He would commit suicide before working. I mean, I know from experience. I haven't worked for Amazon, but they try to recruit me very often. And like, I'd never worked there because I worked with the people, basically the refugees from Amazon. And they burn you out within a year. Basically, there's zero creativity. If you're not a complete conformist, you can fuck right off. And so Leonardo da Vinci would really, in the modern workplace or any kind of tech place or any place where you'd expect to find a genius like him, he would be medicated today. He would have severe difficulties. And that's what you get in a world with 7.8 billion people. So I wanted to throw that out in terms of satwa. Okay, but if anybody's got patience for any more of this, then there's another thing for that that we need to say about the ripeness is all, and that's to get to that ripeness. It's kind of also on Gary's question here of you need that sattva, but you also need to renounce that sattva. You need to basically disconnect. Everybody's always on about the connection and working together and stuff like that, but that's fine, but realization is more important. So you can get to realization in a school or cult and a bunch of people together that are on the same wavelength and doing the same thing because they generate a lot of sattva, and that'll help you amazingly. And basically, if you're into spiritual development or enlightenment, it'll really give you a boost. If you have like-minded people, if you imagine how much progress you can make in a Buddhist monastery up somewhere in Nepal, as opposed to, working at Amazon every day and watching, videos by the Dalai Lama at night. It's one would take 1,000,000 years to get enlightened, and the other, basically, they say really 2 years is all you need with the right regime. But you have to renounce all of that to get enlightened. It's not something a formula, right? So you can't how much sattva do I need to basically make a breakthrough and reach enlightenment? And it's not like that at all. It's really a matter of giving up things, because it's kind of like you've got obstacles and blockages, is how they normally say it. So you really need to get rid of obstacles and attachments. So it's the whole thing about the ripeness is, well, you can only be ripe by giving up things. Now, this is not something that's very native to our culture. In fact, our culture is just rampantly acquisitive. And so we think of everything. We shop for religions, we shop for gurus, and we shop for enlightenment, we shop for ideas, we have a marketplace of ideas. It's basically all constructive, acquisitive, almost cancerous growth behavior. This is exactly the opposite of what I'm talking about. To reach the ripeness is you have to give everything up. There's the hints of it occasionally. You see videos about people talking about decluttering and getting a minimalist lifestyle and stuff. But that's all good, but it's not about lifestyle, it's psychology. So you have to give up all these attachments. And eventually, at first, it's horrible because you're giving up on an attachment. But after a while, it becomes a drug, and you get more and more serotonin, and you get more and more oxytocin, and it becomes easier and easier till eventually to the point where you're desperately looking, you're doing inventories on your psyche to find out what you're attached to, so you can have really a kind of a pleasure of giving them up. You don't want to go too far and do yourself physical injuries. I mean, you don't want to cut your balls off or do Origin or something. Origin was an early Christian that did that. And it's very easy to go a little too far. That's why the ground rules, like, you don't do yourself any harm. But you look for things and people and everything that you're attached, and wave goodbye to them, and then that's the way forward. it's horrible for it's a death. It's basically dying early. If you read these books like people that die, they've been the popular ones that fly past. There's like, Chasing Daylight or something. There's this well-known rich guy, and then he finds out he's got cancer and he's gonna die. So he starts writing this book about dying, and then really he's all giving up on everything, saying goodbye. And that's what it is. Basically, the enlightenment is like a death. So giving things up is you basically saying goodbye to everybody so that you can die. That probably sounds a bit dark, but that is literally what I'm talking to is your alien cortex in your left brain, and it dies. To all intents and purposes, and its view of the world, it's dead at the end of enlightenment. So the way to get there is, by going through an inventory one after another and giving things up. You're going to have to do it anyway. It's the whole. I would never do this and never say this aloud. The only reason why I would say it is because we're going through it. We're going to go through it. There's never been a time. You see, this stuff is always optional before. The big thing coming is that it's no longer optional. It's, you didn't have to do enlightenment. You can live any way you like. But now it's being forced on everybody. 7.8 billion people have to go through the process you go through in enlightenment. They're going to lose everything. So, yeah, once you've renounced everything and you have nothing and no attachments to anything, you're a saint. But everybody's going to get there because there's nothing left. It's a kind of making a kind of a lifestyle out of. I'm starting to make a kind of lifestyle about telling people about this because I think it's a compassionate thing to do. And for example, the people that I know that are mad about science. One person in particular, mad about science, absolutely nuts about it, and had like a lot of deep conversations with her, and I kind of said to her, like, science has maybe about 10 more years to go. I can't see that we can get more than 20 years out of science. We've already passed peak science. Basically all that's going on is applied science. But in collapse, nobody's going to be doing CERN. Nobody's going to be doing the Webb telescope. The James Webb telescope is probably the last view we get of the universe. I can't see us going to space. I mean, Jeff Bezos and Musk and that, they're finished. As soon as the stock market crumbles and everybody gets over electric cars, Elon Musk is destitute. He's going to be bankrupt, and so is Bezos. I can't see Bezos lasting. I think Bezos will probably last longer than Musk, but they're not. These guys are a flash in the pan. They're not going to be going to space and doing SpaceX and Blue Origin and stuff. They won't be able to afford it. Governments won't be able to afford science. Science is very big business now. Papers from CERN have about 2,000 contributors on them. Now, I mean, think of like the great papers of the last century. Einstein had a single author. They won't accept a single author on a scientific paper anymore. You at least have to have 3 people that are experts in the field as authors. And so, yeah, science is a big deal, and it's a luxury item. And so I just use that as an example of the things that people have to let go. They're not thinking it through. So if I'm all wrong and basically there's no collapse and, Michael Mann is right and we all rally forward and solar panels and wind turbines does it for everybody, then yay. But I don't feel bad telling people this, because if I gave everybody a death sentence, kind of like McPherson style, and it turns out that, hey, they're cured, there's nothing wrong with that. They will come out better for it psychologically. It's no bad thing if you're wrong. What is bad is if if they really have got a death sentence and you don't tell them, then they're in for a very, very shitty experience. But being told that, oh, you got 6 months to live, and you go through the dying process and then live, oh, fuck, there ain't nobody that will hate you for that. So it's quite safe to catastrophize, even if it's wrong. I'll put that out there, because you're bringing people closer to the ripeness, right? So, yeah. Anyway, I didn't know it would quite go in that direction. But I better shut up now and let other people respond to that.
Yeah, I want to respond. I think you've made some very good points. And the last point you made about possibly being wrong, I think if we've all seen the science, like the warning signs are all there, the weather patterns, the authoritarianism that's growing around the world. We just spoke about like Trump, Boris. We have these leaders that it seems like one step in the future, it's going to end up we might have another Hitler, right? So it's like the signs are all there. So if you're wrong, I mean, there's a small chance that you're wrong. That's how I see it. And that's how, if we look at the signs carefully, we're heading in that direction. And the last thing I want to make is that the last point is, in knowing this, it's good to get introduced to these ideas, like letting go, these ideas that the modern civilization, industrialized world are not familiar with. Culture of resistance, anarchism, things that a lot of people don't even know or even are not introduced to. I think it's a good idea to get introduced to these ideas as a way to think differently in collapse. But, yeah.
Yeah, so I must put some, warnings on the packaging here. Is that I interpret a lot, of my read on collapse and near-term collapse comes from my experience in South Africa. So it's just sheer deja vu for me. But there's a strong possibility that I'm over-reading, the experience of my youth into our global experience. So you've got to watch out for that kind of bias. The other thing is that there are black swans all over the place. So I put one in my book about the Zanibakov effect, because I tried to think up black swans. One of the lessons I from South Africa that I can communicate to you is, overall, you know where it's going to go, in the sense that the liberal thing is wrong. It's the kind of Stephen Colbert thing where he says, well, you can't say you know the future, but that would be arrogant. So it's arrogant to say that you know the future. And if you don't know the future, then there's always hope. So, you can never say that you're giving up hope, because it implies you mean the future, and no one knows the future. And that's bollocks. And the reason why that's bollocks is if I get a camel and I load straws on it, you know that at some point I'm going to break the camel's back. You just say, look, keep putting straw on that camel's back's going to break. There's no doubt about that. So Stephen Colbert is wrong. You can tell the future. Where it gets complicated is you can't tell which straw it is. That's more difficult. See, what we're doing with climate change and stuff is we're thinking far too linearly. So especially the scientists, right, the experts. The experts are getting dangerous. People like Michael Mann and stuff are literally dangerous at this point, because they're misleading people drastically. And they for one thing, they're speaking in this kind of decatastrophizing code. So they say, well, by 2100, we will, climate change will cost the world 20 trillion a year. And what they're communicating is we're all fucked. The global economy is gone. Basically, anybody that knows what they're talking about then knows that the world cannot sustain a tax of 20 trillion on top of it. So it's code for saying we're fucked. But the public doesn't read that. The public reads like, it's going to cost a bit. Well, climate change doesn't matter. It's just some cost that my kids are going to have to bear. And they say, no, that was code for the bridge. What they're saying, in effect, is like, we're loading up this bridge. The bridge is sagging. Now, the scientists say, if we carry on loading up the bridge like this, then the bridge is going to sag into the canyon 10 kilometers deep. The sag will be 10 kilometers deep by 2100. Now, any engineer will say, well, fuck, bridges don't sag 10 kilometers down. They break pretty soon after you reach, a hundredth of that load. And so all these linear things are very misleading. There's this long dialogue like, well, McPherson is not catastrophizing because look at this. This is a 20-year problem. Look at this. This is a 30-year problem. And you break it down into 100 problems that are, basically 10 years ahead or 20, 30 years ahead. Therefore, we have 20 or 30 years. No, you don't. It's like saying, if you had a patient where you said like, well, okay, you've got Betty Davis knees, you've got your renal failure, you've got failure of the lungs, you've got, heart's going to only last for another week and stuff. And you say like, yeah, but everything is at least a week out, doctor. And you say, well, yeah. And you say, oh, therefore, I'm going to last at least a week. No, if you're that fucked up, you're going to last the day, So people are not compounding these failures. They're not thinking in terms of nonlinear facts, basically breaking points, and they're not thinking in terms of compounding. I mean, look at this. COVID is a very good example for how our thinking is not primed for collapse. Nobody is thinking in terms of exponential growth. So everybody's like horrified. Well, 100,000 people died, and then in America, then 200,000 people. Oh, by the end of the year, it could be 300 people, and then it'd be like 400,000 people at the end of the year, and everybody would be shocked. No one was expecting that. Well, why weren't they? Because it's exponential growth function. And just look at the shape of the graph. It's not linear like this. It's like this. It's a hockey stick. So people are not primed for linear growth. And then the last thing where people are not primed for collapse, why they're too rosy on the estimates, is you only need one single point of failure. They looking at the bridge or the camel and they're saying, well, the knees are right, this part of the spine's all right, the mid part of the spine, that part is like, no, there's only one link in the chain has to go for the camel to break its back. So everything is linked, and they're not thinking in terms of the weakest link. So basically, it's only one of these Gorgon heads has to get you. So you basically look for the Gorgon's head that's most likely to get you, and that Gorgon's head is the clathrates, as far as I can see. So people just think, oh, you can ignore the clathrates and then look at these big components. Well, we got enough food, we got enough water, so therefore McPherson is catastrophizing. No, you just say, look, as soon as the cap is gone on the clathrates, we're fucked. And so when's the cap gone? Well, everybody agrees now that we're going ice-free in, before 2024. How do you think a 2-meter ice cap on the clathrates is going to hold after that? It's like, come on, what planet are you on, Michael, man? So anyway, okay, so that's, and I got one more thing to say, but Sophie, go ahead.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I'll keep it for the end because I was going back to other things. Continue on the climate because I.
Okay, so then the other thing that people don't understand is the scale-free networks. So there was a paper which staggered me that anybody even needed to write, but because I thought it was obvious. But I guess I've spent more time with systems and systems theory than most people. But I was staggered that people didn't know this. And then thinking about it, I realized why they didn't know it. But it was a paper that McPherson cited a lot. And it's basically that food webs and networks go extinct because of co-extinction. So what these guys did was they built a scale-free web. That's basically a preferential web. What it means is to build a preferential web, you just get a pile of paper clips, pick one out at random, pick two out at random, put them together, drop them back. And you just carry on doing this. And after a while, you'll see that they have Pareto distribution. Is one paperclip will have 80% of the paper clips, and it'll go on normal distribution or Pareto distribution, and so and that's a scale-free network. Now that's how human social networks are. That's how the infrastructure, the global distribution infrastructure, that's how food infrastructure, that's how trade works. Is basically, look at Amazon. Amazon has 80%. It's an 80-20 rule, which is Pareto distribution. That's how you expect things to go in a free market economy, and that's how things are. Now, if you imagine shooting those nodes, as you go, you hit the first one, oh, what do you get? Only a slightly connected node. Hit another one, well, you never know here. As you go shooting the nodes, it's only a matter of time, and there's a formula for this. Can't remember whose name of it, but anyway, you're going to hit one of the preferential nodes. You're going to hit one of those 80% connections. Then all the connection paths, I think it's Nyquist theory, but anyway, you hit one of those major connections, then 80% of the thing goes out. Now people went like, fuck, that was only one connection. What the hell? So the grid is functioned like that. The communication paths, the internet is all based on these kind of scale-free networks. So I thought everybody knew that. But you see, the problem is they look at things like extinction rosters. Then they have a list. Now, a list is linear, and that appeals to our left brain. And we go down the list saying, well, we're checking off the list. Basically, there goes the golden toad, and there goes the white rhino. And you say, well, at some point, humans on this list. And it's and the thinking is, well, you have to go down the list till you get to humans on the list. No, you take out some freaking gnat or mosquito, and you go, fuck, humans are gone. How did that happen? Oh, they were part of this mosquito's 80% connected net. Now, they know some of these highly connected nodes, like cyanobacteria. Everybody goes, the oceans have 15% of life in, but who cares? Economists go, no biggie. We'll just use, food farms. We'll just have fish farms, and we can still keep the fishing industry going. Say, look, you stupid motherfucking idiot. It's not about fish farms and whether we can actually harvest the ocean. Is you touch a cyanobacteria, we don't have any fucking oxygen anymore. Everything. 80% of the life is basically anaerobic things, and mushrooms fucking don't depend on them. But you take out cyanobacteria and they're gone. The thing is that the cyanobacteria can go at a tipping point. Scientists don't look at the resilience of a cyanobacteria. It could be basically the salinity of the ocean. We could just reach a temperature. And then they say, oh, I didn't know that most of the cyanobacteria just broke down and they basically lost the protein sheaths and couldn't replicate at, 3 degrees. And so nobody's studying all these failure points and stuff. So but you can expect them. So yeah, we're gambling like drunken sailors, and people like Michael Mann are saying, don't catastrophize because then people lose hope. Well, we need people to lose hope. It's our one best hope is that everybody loses hope, because it's the capitalist system and all based on hope. We all expect a return tomorrow. That's why they inculcate in all these people, be positive, have hope for tomorrow. The reason is because civilization is a huge deficit. It is not a credit system. It runs on a deficit, and that deficit is pushed into the future. So it needs people to have hope for the future so that they return the investment in the future. Now, we cannot return the investment anymore, and so the best thing is for us to abandon capitalism. That means people need to abandon hope. It's very good that the kids don't have hope in the future, right? If people need to be, that needs to be reinforced. People need to be told, you're not going to cash out your pension. You're not going to get the dividend in the future, that people expect from capitalism. You're going to pay, and there's no reward. There are no rewards in the future, and that's what people are not saying.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. And one of the things that's really bad about this culture is that I feel like hope is a big barrier to us being able to form a actual reality-based consensus about these problems. And then it feels like to me in America, especially, as people are like allergic to their emotions, especially ones like sadness.
Yeah, sadness doesn't allow capitalists to get his payout later. You see, basically, they're venture capitalists, and they're giving seed capital to hopeful entrepreneurs, and then the hopeful entrepreneurs spins a profit and gives it back to the venture capitalists, so they cover their risk and have more investment capital to reinvest, and then they compound. And so if the entrepreneurs lose hope, you see, if there are no suckers, entrepreneurs are all suckers. They're all the farmers, and farmers are suckers too. They're all the hopeful idiots that think harvest, they're going to get a payday. So we're in this casino gulag where nobody gets a payday. It's basically they're living off us. It's a labor camp where they're stealing everything from us. They're stealing our life force, our energy, our time. They're stealing everything. The reason why everybody goes in for it is because of the same thing as a state lottery. Is they have a few token winners that keep people going, thinking they'll be a winner. So every one of these fools, I mean, if you go into California there, with Mike will tell you this. You go down particularly to the poorer parts of LA, when the lottery gets big, the bastards are queuing around the corner at one little, like 7-Eleven. The reason is that it's had a number of wins. And so then it gets a reputation for being lucky. What happens is thousands of people then go to that 7-Eleven to get lottery tickets. And what do you know? It gets lucky again. And it's a Matthew effect. But all these people are too dumb to see it. And what they don't do is they don't say, how much does a lottery ticket cost? What is the chance of it paying out? It's like, this is the worst investment I ever made in my life. Now, very few people are smart enough to do that with a lottery ticket. Liberals aren't smart enough to do it with their lottery ticket, which is a college education and, place in life. Say, look at that lottery ticket. Look at your college education. Look how it pays back. It's like, it doesn't pay for itself. You're being conned. No, most people are conned, but I'm a genius. I'm going to be Jeff Bezos. And that's how they keep the thing going. So they get a few lottery winners. It doesn't cost them a lot. If you look at the spreadsheet that they're running, that keeps us on the hamster wheel, they pay out tokens. And the worst thing is as our situation gets worse, they can pay out less. Eventually they say, like, who wants a bowl of rice? I'll do anything for a bowl of rice. And so they're driving the market, the labor market down. And the more they drive it down, the less they have to pay out. Eventually it's like, who wants oxygen? I want oxygen. It's like, and then everybody thinks, Jack got oxygen. Did you hear about Jack? He got oxygen the other day. It's like, fuck, how did he do that? Oh, he worked hard for it. It's like they've got us all that way. So we must lose hope. We must lose hope.
Can I talk a second? First, I saw that A put the hand up to say something. And the other thing is I wanted to say that we're forgetting a big elephant in the room there, which is the COVID at the moment. We're talking about hope. We're talking about the dangers of hope. We're talking about how to make people freak out and to try to realize where we are. But I think that we're not working enough on using our trauma with this pandemic to frighten the people, to frighten the shit out of everyone. Like this is there on our. You talk about black swan, but when we were talking last year, when we were doing your videos last year and before all this, the COVID, we kind of knew there could be a pandemic. There were signs, but this has happened now. And at the beginning of our conversations, we were saying we need to exploit. You remember Comrade COVID, Mike? And this thing, I mean, I think we need to get back working on that too. It's nice to talk about the ripeness is all, but there's a moment there that's ripe too, is that we have enormous amount of media and governments and trying to reassure people we have this under control. It's going to be okay. You can go back to work. We're getting a vaccine. That one is. I think it's a very important time to ride the wave and terrorize the shit out of everyone on this thing and just completely sabotage this kind of reassuring talk. But I'd like to let the word go to A, who wanted to say something earlier, if she's still there.
Oh, thank you. I was just going to say that in the old days, I used to read some peak oil blogs, and one peak oil blogger said that we should get ready for lower lifestyles. But now I think that even though we kind of lower our expectations and our lifestyles, I mean, um, from what Lord Hugh is describing, the collapse will be sudden. So there really is no way to prep. I mean, and I also wanted to relate it to what he had mentioned before, where Americans, particularly, they would rather die than give up all the delicious meat and other food products that they have. So I think that maybe the challenge for us is how do we psychologically um, encourage people to let go and to give up hope without them killing themselves.
Yeah, so it's blindingly difficult. So the way to do it is to get rid of these ego attachments. So again, it is renunciation. Is the only way. So let me give you this example from my experience in South Africa, and this is kind of what I'm trying my best to forestall is a similar outcome, or at least for as many people as possible. Anybody that listens to me, which is no one, virtually. But you see, what happened in South Africa, if people had renounced stuff, basically if they'd got rid of their attachments, they wouldn't have committed suicide. So the farmers committed suicide in big droves, and they've shot their families. They did murder suicides, or their families in particular, and they're still doing it today, and that's what you'll see a lot of, particularly in conservatives, right? So and the reason is they can't envisage the world afterwards. So they can't give up the old life. So imagine you're getting fairly, into your middle age. You've played by the rules. You're a conservative. You've done pretty well out of, basically you're white. You've done pretty well out of the system. Now, at the end of apartheid, they know that there's going to be a black government, and this is a new world. Now, they don't wait to see how it's going to be in that new world. They don't want to reinvent themselves in the new world. They would rather die because they vested in the ego that's passing. Now, it's a kind of strength, right? So they literally don't have the strength to into the new South Africa and see what it's like with a black government, see how things go, and just take it day to day. That they don't have the strength for that journey, so they'd rather just end. Now, I must emphasize something here just to underline how deeply this goes and why they commit suicide. Now, imagine this. There's a strong sexual component to this too, and this never gets mentioned. But a lot of the text of what's coming has a dark sexual overtone, and it's kind of taboo for us to discuss. Now, it would definitely help people to discuss this. So in terms of race relations, almost nobody will discuss sex, and that's unfortunate, because that's really the key issue in most respects. So, for example, in South Africa, what these guys were killing themselves about was about the end of apartheid, when these farmers on their farms rounded up their family and shot themselves. The reason why, if it seems extreme to do it, imagine this, is that the guy now has to face the fact that an old white farmer has to face the fact that his daughter now might come home with a black guy. Now, that doesn't sound too bad to us, but if his daughter brought a black guy home, what is saying is his ancestors to 6 generations are howling. They're basically saying, your daughter's gone bestial and she did it on your watch. Basically, you're never going to recover your humanity again. So rather than see that, he would rather he and his family died. Now, that probably doesn't resonate at all with anybody in this audience or the first world. So let me put it another way. Imagine that during collapse, imagine this. It's going to get, or in people's minds, in maybe a conservative's mind, it's going to get very Mad Max. Okay. Now, in that, they're going to be gangs of guys like the Soviet army, the Red Army. Imagine it like Berlin. The Soviet army, it's very like Berlin. So it's very like the collapse of Germany. Let's use that example. You're a conservative. You're fighting this battle, kind of Hitler-like, to sort out the world's problems and put you on top. Now, goes very well until you get to about Stalingrad, and then from Stalingrad, everybody in Germany knows that they're completely fucked. So we're kind of getting to our Stalingrad, and then everybody knows we're basically November might be pretty much our Stalingrad for all we know. From that moment on, can't remember how many people were left in Germany at that stage, but anyway, we're talking tens of millions. And they all know they're going to be fucked. Now, I'm not using that as an adjective. That basically it's not hyperbole. They are going to be raped. So they know the Red Army is going to come in. People are going to get killed and raped. Most of the women are going to get raped as a program, as a mass retaliatory tactic. And so the Red Army swoops in, and they did it to allies. They did mass rapes to Yugoslav women. They're probably they're maybe 20 million, I don't know, something like that. Women in Germany got raped. Now they didn't all know that. You won't read all of this in a history book. In a history book, you just read about where the forces were distributed, and they don't let you inside the minds, particularly of the Germans, when they know this is coming. So the Germans then have various defensive strategies psychologically. Now, you can only read about their military defensive strategies, and you're not allowed access to the mental psychological. But one of the things they told themselves was the Russian soldiers can't rape us en masse in the streets. So if we just stay en masse and stay in the streets, they can't exactly rape women in the streets in public. Wrong. Because they didn't understand the dynamic that it was retribution, right? Basically, it was punishment. So it was almost ritualized, and so they could. So there were many ways that they completely underestimated the situation. I think 1 in 10 women that were raped committed suicide. So that's something you don't often hear about. And we're talking about places like Yugoslavia was very bad, and Yugoslavia was an ally, and became communist, and was So if you talk to people in Yugoslavia, they'll tell you it was very. There's a very dark secrets and stuff. There are a lot of Yugoslavs that know that they children of rape. There were forced marriages to Red soldiers and stuff like that. So basically, now all of this kind of stuff may be coming, maybe not, but it is definitely coming in the psychology of conservatives. So it's very bad to force veganism on people and stuff like this, because you're getting closer to that outcome. If you see, there's far more involved in what's the big deal? Anybody can change their lifestyle and not eat meat. No, it's far deeper than that. Because to a conservative, my granddad ate meat. I have fucking bearskin hat on the wall from Davy Crockett that he, I have a moose head where he ate meat. He was a man. Men eat. You're emasculating a man to get them to eat fucking vegetables, psychologically speaking. So all of these things are building up in the psychology. It's saying you're taking away everything from me, and that's not voluntary. And eventually you get to a point where you say, like, I don't want to see my daughter gang raped by Antifa. I don't want to see anarchists climbing through the window to rape my grandmother. And I'm not going to see a government that forces me to be vegetarian. And so basically they're seeing it. They're seeing the steamroller approach until eventually they say, I can't take it anymore. And they'll shoot themselves and their family. Now, this is bad for us on a small level, on a family level, but some of these bastards are in power. Imagine Trump or something in power, and with a lot of power. He's got the nuclear arsenal, the most powerful man in the world. The same psychology applies to him. At some point, he'll do what Hitler did, and Hitler loved Germany. He loved Germany. He loved the German people more than life itself. In the bunker, he ordered the food and supplies destroyed because he wanted to kill the German people off. He said, they failed. They failed me. They failed the race of life. They are not the chosen people. They need to die. They vermin, exterminate them. And he gave the orders to effectively exterminate them. Now some of these guys like Trump will do shit like that. Okay.
Can I say something to answer to A on the suicide and also what you said on collapse? Because you more or less said, like, if there was a kind of a consensus that it was going to be sudden. I don't think we know there's no consensus on any sudden, apart if there's a black swan event that happened, for example, like in Hugh's book, where a submarine suddenly explodes on the bottom of the ocean and loads of methane is. But I mean, I know at my age that collapse is a thing that's unfolding since the 70s, and I've seen the signs gradually happening around me in nature and everywhere. Collapse is now all these sudden Hollywood kind of big boom meteorite things like that. That's in the unconscious. I don't think that is a good way to look at things. I think the collapse is a daily nasty gnawing cancer that's happening, and it's going to be a slow death. Now, it's good. There will be probably violence in the future. It could happen in November. It could happen in 10 years. We don't know all these things. There's this prepper thing. All this thing is also backing up a big industry. There's loads of guys making a lot of money selling bunkers and selling all sorts of survival stuff. So I don't think we should look at that too much. But for the suicide, I think your analysis, Hugh, is excellent on history and on what happens in what happened in Germany and what happened. But those were people facing rather sudden things. Now we're talking about an existential collapse, extinction maybe of human beings, massive extinction of our natural world. The reaction of suicide in that case cannot exactly be linked to hordes coming to rape you, and which could happen on the side. But the main thing, I think, is to come back to what we have discussed on the points of on the 12 commandments. Letting go of an ego, letting go of a persona that refuses to face the fact, that, and sticks to the rigid persona that we had, is the only way that suicide will not creep into everybody's mind. And that's what we're doing with the Desiderata Extinctionati. I can't say it. I can never say it. But anyway, you know what I mean. So, forcing people to realize the magnitude, number one, of the pandemic, because I don't think people realize, and number two, of course, of what is happening in the world now, and that we've been talking about for quite a few months and years. I don't see. I can only see a good outcome. I don't see. The mental health problems are much more important at the moment because people are isolated. and people are not seeing each other, and they're stuck in front of their Netflix and all that. So there is at the moment an increase in mental health, about 35 to 40% in all Western countries at the moment, and there's a wave of suicides happening now. That's for sure. But I don't think it's linked to collapse. It's linked to isolation, to social isolation, and to this horrible civilization where we are at the moment. So I think you need to terrorize people more. You need to scare the shit out of everybody much more. I really
So yeah, I largely agree, but where I disagree is that the COVID, where people commit suicide from COVID is from. I'm talking about males now, and the male side is but economics is important for male ego, and they but we have inculcated in the male generation that their self-worth comes from work, and so unemployment is a big source of despair. But there's also a large front of things that just generally are gnawing at people's sense of identity and ego. So that includes, the inability to live the life that their parents lived. Now, most people will take as a failure. So there are a lot of ways of comparing this, like the difference in social inequality is people feel like a loser. So you go from a certain point of hope where people in America, they see somebody in a super yacht and they go, wow, that's cool. One day I'm going to be, we're still at that stage where Bill Gates goes on, say, the Stephen Colbert show, and everyone goes, and the reason is because they all think they're going to be a billionaire one day. Maybe if they just touch his aura, some luck will rub off on them. And then they get to the point where they see a super yacht and they feel like, fuck, I'll never get there. I'm a failure. And then they have, so there are these points which people get ego exhaustion. And the way to avoid them is to detach from those points of ego. So not only scaring people about what is coming, but the thing that they can actively do is psychologically get rid of them early. So, just liberals now in this democracy, part of the pain and angst and hope and emotional roller coaster is they vested in the outcome in a congressional election when congressional governance is as good as dead. I mean, it's better to explain to them government is going away. Don't expect the police force to be there. You see, in South Africa, the police were, the boys in blue that basically going to keep the savages away and keep the black hordes away. And then basically the police very soon got overwhelmed. That's something that in a liberal democracy they don't realize is how weak the security forces are. They overwhelmed freaking nothing. A black bloc can overwhelm the security forces. Everybody's like, oh, the security forces, and it's like, oh man, they go like that. But you can wear them out, like the guys in Hong Kong. They were ragged. They were, the security, and the security forces get demoralized too. They also started committing suicide. The police in South Africa were huge suicide rates, and you're seeing that now too. So the thing is that you have to get people to say, don't rely on the police. Don't think, well, I'll always be able to dial 911. You see, in South Africa, it quickly got to the stage where the police were overwhelmed. They wouldn't investigate cases at all. And if you dialed 911, you had to say that it was something trivial. The good thing to say was there was a fire. If you said, well, there are 4 guys beating the crap out of me and raping my wife, the police wouldn't come because the police don't want to face guys with machine guns. So you had to trick the police to come in here. And now people are not ready for that. They still, in their minds, they think of the state as strong and protecting them. And so a better thing to do than scare them is to prepare them for the fact that the social contract that liberals have with the government is gone. Right? The teachers, even at the state level, they're bankrupt. They don't have the money to pay fire officers and police. People are saying, don't defund the police. The police are defunded already because of collapse. The banks have collapsed. So if you get people in this mindset, yeah.
But I can sense a very big difference between people who are living in America, like you have lived, and Mike, and suppose A and TB, I don't know, and Europe, because I'm in a country where the problems don't seem to be looked at the same way as you do. And I'm learning from what you're saying, and it's very interesting to see it. But for example, here, the biggest problem in Ireland at the moment, for example, with this COVID I mean, at the moment, the mental health problem, people can't drink, can't go to the pub, and they can't fuck. Basically, young people can't have sex like they want, so they're going berserk. They can't have raves. There's parties everywhere. They have the police is raiding. These things are at a very basic human level of being together, you know, lacking the contact. And there's no, we're extremely well equipped. We've got plenty of things for hospitals and doctors and even social support and backing up. The police has no guns here, you know, and it's not allowed. And, you know, so you're looking at a complete different world. And then when I'm talking about the mental health issues here, and I don't travel, so I'm only in a little bubble on an island. So, but what I see is people going back